Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hope you're doing well. So I wanted to touch on a topic today concerning the escort mindset, and I have some notes here that I wanted to share with you. I'm trying to get them to stick on the side, but there we go. But it wouldn't go. So, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. The escort mindset. So it's perils, right? Ruthlessness, hypermaterialism, lack of value for safety, perpetually owned and operated by money, not nurturing, no respect for health. They make dangerous mothers because of the type of men they allow around their children and their neglect by using nannies and daycares and whatnot. So those are some bullet points that I'm gonna go off of. So the ruthlessness. Cardi B made songs about how she drugged and R-worded men, right? The scammer, get your bag, get your money, hustler, grinder attitude of a lot of female rappers shows their ruthlessness, okay? And many of them were escorts. Cardi B was a prostitute stripper. And when you think about how a lot of these casting couches work, women know that they have to do stuff with men in order to climb the ladder, okay? Now, when women have pimps, they do become ruthless because they have to survive and they have to change their mindset because of how their pimps demand a certain amount of money and how their pimps toughen them up. A lot of pimps, when Snoop Dogg would say, "My pimp hand is strong," they're really talking about how they really beat women and put them in line, okay? And when you are obsessed with money, you have to be driven. If you notice the language that the boss babes use, it's a ruthlessness for money. You gotta chase it, you gotta attain all this stuff. When you're money grubbing, when you're the dragon trying to hoard every gold coin, you have to be ruthless, and your charitable nature is cut off because you have to turn yourself into a miser and a hoarder of wealth, which reads into hypermaterialism. A lot, I don't remember the name of the Red Pill podcast, but they had interviewed an OnlyFans chick, and she said, oh, she was from England, clearly, and she was like, my kid gets to go to a private school. He gets to have these clothes, and she was naming all this stuff because of what she does. And then, as the guy, it was a white girl and it was a black guy interviewing her, and he said, what happens when your son's classmate, find your content and show it to him, and he's having very negative thoughts and whatnot. And then she started talking, but then she started breaking down, saying, what would you prefer? That I just don't exist? That I hurt myself? That I don't this, and that? He started, like, really revealing her mental frailty there. So at first she started off defending her position with intensity, with ruthlessness, but then her mental trauma came to the surface, okay? And she argued that what she was doing was okay because of the money at the end. So if you chase money, you have to become a bit ruthless because you want to see those numbers increase. You have to be able to scam people and harm people and step on the necks and heads of others to climb up that mountain. And escorting, in all of its forms, destroys families, so you are harming society. You are harming other women. The escorts can never be part of the sisterhood because they help men to sin. They help men to dishonor themselves. They indulge men's sin. They indulge the lustful desires. They are selling their bodies and selling out their fellow women for money so that they can enjoy brand names, so that they can enjoy all the luxuries of life at the expense of the hereafter, at the expense of the sanctity of marriage, at the expense of honor and dignity and virtue within the broader society. And I have seen countless times where I will go back and forth with women on social media where they blame only the men. They always will say, well, if men just wouldn't buy it, then nothing would exist. But I always explained, the customer and the producer have a symbiotic relationship. Okay? And it's harder for, it's like if there was a male gigolo, right, which they do exist, it's easier to say no to that. It really is, in my opinion. He could be super handsome, but you're like, I'm not paying for that. But for men, it is exceedingly difficult, especially if they're going through a tough time in their relationship, and the woman knows that occultic way around a man's mind, and the man is just weak. There are lots of techniques they use to bait and hook men in, alright? That's their profession. They are professionals at getting men to pay for things that they can get for free, okay, from a wife. So, they are ruthless to their own fellow women folk. And they often say, I don't care if he's married, all men cheat, that's her problem. They don't mind at all. While these escorts complain about the patriarchy and say that the world would be peaceful with a matriarchy, it wouldn't, because you have women like these destroying marriages and destabilizing homes. Okay? Further, the ruthlessness that they exhibit is a demonic one, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has told us in hadith, narrated by the Prophet, peace be upon him, and where we are only guaranteed bread, water, shelter, and clothing to cover our private parts, that this world, we need to be like a traveler. Nothing will go with us except our deeds, right? We will be held accountable for our actions. We can't bribe our way into paradise. So materialism has no influence on us in the hereafter, except we will be held accountable for how we spent our money, how we earned our money. Money for us is a tool. The saying, who will give Allah a goodly loan, right? Everything we spend in the way of Allah will be a benefit for us. And so halal money is a key figure for us. We are not told to be misers and hoarders of wealth. We need to help the orphans, we need to help the widows, the needy, all that, alright? We are not told to be ruthless in pursuit of hyper-materialism, which the atheist promotes, and which the occultist bribes humanity. And an escort mindset has served that agenda of ruthless hyper-materialism, because they degrade their own soul so that they can have a CEO sell them garbage, right? Chanel, Gucci, Versace. They think that they have worth based on these brands of people they'll never meet who made the product. It's sold at a higher rate than what it's actually worth, and usually made in sweatshops. It's just an illusion. So an escort is someone who's so low IQ that they think brands are the way in which you have human value. And so for them to get value and feel a higher self-esteem, they have to have this ruthless pursuit of money. And then they are so foolish that they actually waste their money on clothing. I want you to really think about how some of these women will let men brutally sodomize them. So sometimes they have to go get stitches, they complain, they have pain, and then they go and they get that money, and then they buy a pair of shoes, and they have a whole closet full of shoes. Both of my stepmoms were of the escorts, and my mom was as well, and my dad loved escorts. So, and I grew up in Philadelphia partly, and there was girls who would talk about how they wanted to go into being strippers. It's a very common thing, sadly, now, and it's worse now. And it usually comes from this focus of materialism. Everyone wants to have a higher self-esteem. They think they get that higher self-esteem by being ruthlessly materialistic, right? And so, further, they don't value safety, because men who purchase women are not safe men, okay? It is dangerous. Marriage is safe. Feminists hate marriage. Yes, they do. Sorry. They're constantly trying to convince women to get divorces. They're constantly trying to make women find some form of abuse. Everything is abuse with them. Financial abuse. Everything is abuse. I mean, it's ridiculous. They want to separate women. And I don't care what anyone says. I've read enough feminist literature and had back and forth with enough type of prominent feminists to the point where I can clearly see they want to destabilize the nuclear family and the patriarchy by attacking marriage, okay? So be mindful of how I say they don't value safety, because safety comes from marriage more than it does sleeping with people and selling yourself. Feminists will argue that you can make it safer by having brothel culture. It's just not the case. You get stalkers. Women risk more because they want to get a higher price tag. So for me, I'd say you getting in a car with a man who you don't really know, and even if you do know him, you're automatically in danger. Every time you close the door and go into a hotel room, you are in danger. Every time you go on a yacht party, you are in danger. Alright? The amount of women who get roofied, the amount of women who get blackmailed with people will have, like, you go to a mansion party, they have secret cameras installed. You're being recorded. These will be used against you. That's not safe. You could think everything's going to be a secret. We all got these secrets. And then you go serve your customers. Then later, when you want to repent and change, you get out of line. Those videos, those images are kept there. And then your husband, who maybe didn't know you did that kind of stuff, can watch, on a loop, you servicing half the football team. And then your marriage is over. Your kids don't have their dad, and so on and so forth. Alright? It is dangerous. The escort lifestyle is always dangerous, regardless of if you've only had, for now, let's say you've had 20 men, and you think, I can keep going to 200 men and none of them will ever be negative. You can't vet evil very well, because evil wears many masks, as I have proven countless times. If you watch true crime, the faces of people who did atrocities, you wouldn't even think that they could do it. And the old saying, don't judge a book by its cover, comes to mind. The amount of wickedness that is hidden behind a grand smile and slicked back hair would surprise you. Plenty of evil rich men who pay you can make you disappear. It's been done countless times, and at least there's a note of Hollywood having a little bit of honesty with how easily disposable escorts are. And feminists think they can nag men into caring about escorts, but the truth is, you will always see, even though men cheat on their wives, they'll always care about their wife more than the harlot. This is something that is just very common. I mean, it's very hard to love a bike that everyone gets to have and take a turn on, versus the bike you bought that's been yours, and you watch it get custom made, and you lock it up nice and tight and hope no one steals it, and you have some insurance on it or something. It's a very different thing. No one really invests in escorts. Escorts are paid to leave, and they're only to be used in a sexual manner and then tossed to the side, even though there are escorts who will give massages and be arm candy to special events. Either way, it's a brutal lifestyle, and you cannot get the respect of the men in a true sense because you're not doing something honorable. And ruthless businessmen know exactly that you are a poor investment. And so the escort mindset gets even more ruthless. Oh, you're going to use me? No, I'll use you for your money. The man uses her for the body. She only has a very small window. She has to maximize. And then as she gets older, she becomes a fetish. And then it gets even more creepy. When she gets to be, 50, 60, she still wants to do that garbage. Now you're going to get some real wackos. Okay? Real dangerous folk. And so escorts don't make safe decisions. And they don't make safe decisions with who they go out with. And they're very easily tricked. And they risk diseases. Okay? Diseases should make you deathly afraid. Now, I know liberal atheists try to destigmatize STDs. If you got AIDS, hook it up. California made that law, I believe, if I'm going to word it right, where it's no longer a crime to infect someone with AIDS. You don't legally have to notify the person you're having intimacy with that you have AIDS, because you can just take medicines for the rest of your life, and it's really degenerate. But the wording of that I may have jumbled, but you can look it up. about the laws around notifying a person with that you have AIDS, right? So you'll see liberals constantly say, yeah, STDs are no big deal. But then you'll see girls crying on TikTok saying genital warts are painful. I can't believe I have to take this medication for the rest of my life. And it's ugly, it's disgusting looking. So instead of saying don't engage in high risky behavior, they just say brag about having STDs. And that's the scary part. Within marriage, you are protected. Escorts risk their own health so they can buy stuff. This is how low IQ and how much they don't love themselves. They will put nails on, they'll have fancy jewelry, all that stuff, and say, I love myself, I love myself, I love myself. If you really loved yourself, you wouldn't risk your physical safety and you wouldn't risk your literal health to get money so that you can have more shoes you won't wear, so that you can have all the luxuries that don't really add to your happiness, that you use as a coping mask to run away from your inner thoughts, okay? Now, further, escorts are not very nurturing naturally because they are constantly putting on a facade of being a nurturer. And what's fascinating is escorts will marry some of these rich guys, right? Or date them. They get pregnant, they have a kid, but the husband starts, falling for the nanny. And that's something that's remarkable. Because he got his Barbie. Wouldn't he be content? She won't cook, she won't clean, she only loves money, she spends a lot to look like a Barbie. But she ditches the kid with the nanny, but the nanny is more plain, the nanny is more humble, and more earthy, less decadent. And then he ends up cheating with the nanny. The amount of babysitters and nannies who get... it's very sad. I don't support adultery, obviously, but it goes to show that men have more than one palate. And so the escort mindset of not being nurturing and pawning the kids off so that she can continue to look like a porn star don't really pay off as much as she thinks she does. And you can't be the perfect model and then be the perfect mother. And it shows that they prefer to be eye candy for as long as possible rather than spending time doing crafts and wonderful things with their children. Okay? Further, they also make dangerous mothers because the type of men they will allow around the home. See, a lot of red pillars don't touch on this topic, and I'm not sure why. But if you get that woman pregnant, and she was an escort, and she gets creepy dudes who like doing really degenerate things with escorts, peeing on them, doing all kinds of creepy stuff, and then your woman could be snorting cocaine, doing other stuff, and then her customer comes over to the home and your kid's there playing with the toys, tons of predators are going to see those kids. And they're going to notice that she has kids. And so you can say, oh, well, hopefully she will just pimp herself out, not with the home. But as these women get older, they get addicted to drugs. As they become more desperate to cling to their beauty and get the validation loop, they will start to invite orbiter men who are dangerous and who are predatory. And those guys are deeply perverted, and they're very unsafe to have around children and around your daughters. Let's say your daughter's not even like her mom, but having that kind of a woman around is always a threat because her lewd harlotry is an energy that permeates the home of sin and degradation and wickedness and depravity. And you may have liked her for that, but the love you should have for your daughter will be different. This is a common thing. Men will be irresponsible and get an escort pregnant. And then when the escort is wild, full of drama, they really loathe what they did. Because the beauty no longer is a spell upon them, and they see that she is an inferior mother. And so she neglects her own mental health. She masks it. It's all illusions. And a lot of escorts, they've done things that if you would have heard about, you would get very angry. Like, for example, if you recall in The Sopranos, when Adriana, that actress, by the way, who played Adriana in The Sopranos, her son helps her edit her OnlyFans. That's how degenerate she is in actual real life. And Timcast had her on. And so Timcast was promoting her, and she's a degenerate. Tim is a liberal. And, it's funny that he'll pretend he's conservative and a Christian with moral values, but he's not. He's an atheist. And so, in that scene with Christopher Moltisanti, they start talking about their past. Adriana mentions some of the gross things she's done. He gets mad at her, and I think he chokes her or hits her or whatever. And this is a common thing. Men will start hearing what that woman has done and become utterly disgusted. And some women will say, oh, kiss don't tell. A woman never tells. They try to put a mask on the lewdness of it all. But in reality, it's perilous, it's degenerate, and it's soul-sucking. And it's unhealthy spiritually, health-wise, and mental-wise. It's not a good thing, okay? So, you have to be like Prophet Joseph. May Allah be pleased with him. When he refused to sleep with a beautiful woman who was coming at him. You have to. You have to. Because an escort is somebody who has literally decided money is worth everything. It's worth my health. It's worth my eternal soul. It's worth my children's safety. It's worth my safety. I need name brands. So you got Tommy Hilfiger. They're like walking billboards. It's really quite pathetic. They want to have rings and jewelries and watches and purses and all the other nonsense that's literally going to go in the landfill when they die or get pawned. Or they'll have, like, when you're in the mortuary, you're having your viewing. So many people steal jewelry off a dead body. I mean, it's quite ridiculous. So you are not gonna really help a lot of people with these aging bags that you've hoarded. It doesn't really change who you are. And if someone can only like you because of the materialism around you, then you haven't made true friends. I'm not saying you have to have poverty mindset or you have to look like a hobo, but what I'm saying is the escort has decided that she will sleep with strangers. The smell of a stranger. The ability to allow a man you don't like, that you don't love, who could care less if you died, to mount you. And for you to have to take more than a starfish action shows that you have shut off a key figure and you cannot escape that past. It's there forever. And the mental trauma that builds up underneath, the sort of sickness. In Shakespeare, Lady Macbeth, from the play Macbeth, she has committed a deed and she has shanked somebody or helped participate in the shanking, and she got blood on her hands, and she goes crazy washing her hands saying, will these hands never be clean? And she just keeps scrubbing and scrubbing and there's no blood there, but she can't get the filth off. And this is something very, very common with these women when they're beautiful still, and the drugs haven't taken full effect, the lifestyle hasn't caught up, the poison hasn't really crunched and ruined the roots of the tree, right? They have the ego, the braggadocious nature. But then when you start, 25, 26, things start churning and burning, and you're like, wow, and you can't escape your own thoughts. The only way that they try to mask it is pretending that they love it, or constantly abating those thoughts by a visual nature. So I have to have lots of stimulation. I have to always, they can't sit in silence and like meditate and pray because the flashes come in involuntarily. And then they have to say, okay, I need SSRIs, I need pills, I need vodka. Like they have to escape. And then this whirliness of all these conflicted emotions rests there. And then a guy comes, he doesn't know her past and whatnot. She's hiding it pretty well behind that 7 layers of makeup and Botox and plastic surgery. And then one day it just bam, right in the face. And she hasn't dealt with her mistakes. She doesn't have accountability with her mistakes. The escort mindset wrestles with her own soul, and she doesn't know how to let it go. It's something just so perilous that will cause men a lot of mental anguish. And some men never learn. They still keep going around those women because men think a woman who worships money is a status symbol just because she's pretty. And so the type of man who has escorts around him, you have to understand that he doesn't actually care about this woman. You can't care about a woman and then encourage her to live a lifestyle that's going to damn her to hell. That's going to cause her physical harm, cause her damage to her health. That's impossible. And you can't trust someone who is a chameleon. Someone who can literally shift. Who has to use lust in order to get you to pay attention to her. Who needs to use lust in order to feel like she has purpose in this world. Someone who indulges her base desires instead of saying, you know what, maybe I shouldn't let this pot-bellied 50-year-old guy rail me in the back of a car for, $200. And remember, the higher the price tag of the woman, the more she's shut off and the more she's been asked to do. A lot of men think because a woman will say, oh, you need to buy me a gift of my favorite perfume. Here's my Amazon wish list. Here's my, where I like to eat. They think, oh, she has expensive taste, therefore she's had less partners. This isn't true. A lot of these men who have paid these women, they're going to want a return on their investment, their temporary investment, rather. Where those women do things with animals. Those women do things that would churn your stomach. But you don't know that because you're fooled by the makeup. But when these women are getting old and saggy and haggy, or they end up looking like Joanne Rivers, you'll see their truth start to pour out, because pouring so much sin into a very full cup, it's going to leak out. You're going to see glimpses of it. It's very dangerous. It's reckless behavior. And men who really like escorting, they become more wicked and they start to really resent women. And it becomes this sort of fuel for each other's hatred of the genders. Men start to hate women, women start to hate men. So many retired hookers have a bitterness towards men, as they've seen the depravity. They hate themselves for what they did with men, and then what they did for drug money, what they did in crack houses, what they did in brothels, what they did on the yacht, what they did in the hot tub. And that they had to do this, they felt, for the money. I recall one degenerate hooker said that while the older man was on her and she felt disgusted when his sweat was falling off, but he piled the stacks of money on the kitchen counter where they were doing stuff, and she stared at it the time until it was over. And when she said that, I was like, the hyper-materialism. She stared at the money, and the man knew to put the money on the counter. She was so disgusted with her actions that she had to stare at the money in order to get through it. When you're giving birth, when you're pushing in labor, they tell you to focus on a focal point and push. Like when you're in pain, look at your baby's little slippers you brought. When you're in pain, look at something that helps you to cope, that soothes you. So their soothing is money. They look at the money. They look at the items. They imagine how they'll spend the money, what they're gonna buy. And when she goes home, like when she's leaving that situation, the smell of that man is on her. The grossness, the feces, all of it. And then she has to go home and take a shower, look at herself in the mirror, and apply all that makeup. And then she's got the money. And then she survived something that could have turned real nasty real quick. And then she's off to, okay, well, at least my hair looks nice today. At least, I can afford the dry cleaning. they start to rationalize their degenerate behavior. And an atheist who encourages this in women doesn't care about how that woman will turn out. They just hate religion and hate families and hate purity and desire a very hedonistic, kinky world. Okay, a lot of atheists are really into sodomy with trans women, and they have other fetishes that they like T.J. Kirk and Kyle Kalinske. If you've ever listened to them talk, and Matt Dillahunty, you can get hints at their probably their very horrible adult content search history. You know, what they watch, how depraved they are, even though they try to have different ways of coming off as intellectuals. And so you have to be careful. You have to be very careful. Muslim men must not fall for this trap. And Muslim women must never turn to that lifestyle. It's very common apparently in Dubai. And it's very quite sad. Very quite sad. And so the young men of today who are growing up with social media, they could be looking at a woman, and it could also be a catfish, phishing account, total scam. You have to watch out for that as well. But you have to remember, the escorts, some of them work for gangs. They will help set you up. Some women work for different mafias and cartels, right? They can scope out, gain your profile. Some are also FBI, CIA honeypots. No matter which way you square it, the risk of the escort is totally not worth the cost. And so men have to be reminded. The fitna of women that the Prophet, peace be upon him, talked about is real. And the fact that we have Prophet Yusuf, may Allah be pleased with him, and these other examples of how adultery is wrong, stoning, flogging, stuff like that, you have to wake up and say, there's a reason why this stuff is wrong, and you have to watch out for it, okay? The escort is dangerous. Would you want to lay in a bed infested with bed bugs? Would you want to sleep in a room where there was literally an infestation of bugs on the wall? Could you sleep soundly? When you sleep with an escort, that is worse than that. Okay? You can't let your guard down. And you shutting off the healthy masculine energy in order to be ruthless with the ruthless escort isn't good for your soul. You can't be sinful and then use the escort and think you won't come out with a harder heart. You can't save her either. She has to save herself. Now, Hollywood put out movies like Pretty Woman that glamorize that lifestyle. And Marilyn Monroe was someone who glamorized that lifestyle. I mean, she had her bazungas out in front of the Queen of England. And she was just... really just all these bad women who are pushed have made men let their guard down and lose sight of what their responsibility is. And so, with California also decriminalizing loitering for sex in Oakland, I shared that news story many times, they're really pushing women to enter into this, and there's tons of people who get drones and then they fly the drone over where all these pimps have these women, right? And it's perilous. These women are walking around in thongs, and secular liberal atheists say that's great. Mashallah. That's what they would say. If they had a word, mashallah, they would say that to that activity. Whereas us Muslims would say, astaghfirullah, right? We have a higher sense of morality. We have a higher sense of morality. And so, the perils that come with even being around an escort. She wants your money. She might infect you with the disease. She doesn't care about her health. She doesn't care about her spirituality. You have to be careful. Some of them have a vendetta. It's fascinating how in the ancient times there were so many stories about the perils of the dangerous woman, the cunningness, the shrewdness of a wicked woman. But it seems as if today religions have let down their guard, except for Islam, but they have pushed women into such things. by not having men take on their noble role of the patriarchy. And men shaming other men for not using escorts. Joe Rogan is also someone who facilitates that behavior in young men. Joe Rogan pushes drugs. He's a liberal. In his recent special, he talked about the joy of your prostate getting milked. He joked about aliens doing stuff to your brown star. Okay, he's talked about how he yanks one out even when he's next to the bed with his wife. He's so degenerate, so perverted, and he himself uses escorts. He himself is very into adult content. He said his stepdaughter, he wouldn't mind if she did it. Very, very lewd, this man. Okay, a drug pusher, adult content pusher. He's really into the anus. I mean, you only need to... I wish I knew how to gather all the clips, but it would be so dirty to do it. But when he's high, his wickedness comes out, and regardless of how you think he's cool or whatever, you need to see what he pushes. So Rogan likes the escort mindset. He's from Los Angeles, technically. He grew up a lot of time in San Francisco, from what I recall. Yes, he moved to Texas, but he's wealthy and he loves to be around those kind of women, okay? That's his circle. Brian Callen loves adult women, adult content women. And Brendan Schaub cheated on his wife. Like, they're all those kinds of men. Really, Ari Shaffir, they're all that. Bert Kreischer. When you start to analyze their behaviors, you begin to see who they are and what they push. So I don't blame men for being utterly confused on the dangers of the escort mindset, and by women thinking that they need to escort to go and find the right man, to go find the rich guy. Because it's just a sad time for men and women right now. But we are in a new form of Babylon. And so consider this video a sort of friendly reminder to have ethical behavior. Don't purchase those women. Don't trust those women. You can't save those women. Avoid those women. You have to tell yourself, am I really that weak that I see boobs and a butt and I can't just say no thank you and keep it moving, keep it flowing, focus on something else? This is why in Islam men are told to lower their gaze. The less attention you give them, the more they see them and spurge out. You have to be careful. You have to be careful. And if anything, you have to think about how these escorts could harm you. How they could bring drama and trauma to your life. Okay? Some of them are so desperate for a mate that they will stalk you, harass you, and really just tell your dirty laundry to the world. You can't trust them. The most common example, what happened to Walter from Fresh and Fit. His woman, Daisy, she was an escort who went on yak parties, and she won Miss Something and has a lot of plastic surgery. And then she went on a tour, you know, airing out the dirty laundry and proving that obviously those men are hypocrites because they have women on to shame them for escorting, but then they themselves buy those women. So, and their highest ranked shows are where they have those escorts on. So they are helping those escorts to get customers while also earning money off of them in super chats and whatnot. And so, you know, they both need each other in a very strange sense. So be careful. They can say they're against escorts, but they help them to get more money. So you can't be against something and then help those people succeed in the degenerate path that they're on. But at least some of them gave some criticism, so I'll give them that. But be mindful is my point. I know it's hard. The world is very difficult for men right now. Very difficult. I understand. But it doesn't hurt to do a little pep talk and to help encourage you in case an occultist woman is, you know, playing her games with you in DMs or WhatsApp or in person, or you're addicted or something like that. This could be the video you need at just the right time. May Allah guide us and protect us. May Allah keep us steadfast on His religion. Peace be upon the prophets and the messengers and their families. Be safe out there, fam. If you'd like to support my work and read more about what I write, you can go to www.subscribestar.com/MilahanArchive, and please like, comment, and subscribe.